It's Tuesday, April 7th, 2026. More details from the Easter Iran miracle. No more customs for you and jumping the shark next on the AM Update. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth yesterday at the White House provided more details on that daring mission to rescue the American airmen who went down over Iran. Listen to Pete Hegseth's account.
A running coordination cell. And the top of it read 45 minutes and 45 hours and 56 minutes. For 45 hours and 56 minutes, we held that call open for coordination. From the moment our pilots went down, our mission was unblinking. The call never dropped, the meeting never stopped, the planning never ceased. The president demanded rapid, decisive action. He backed our military with the full weight of his resolve, refusing to let enemy propaganda or tactical setbacks deter us.
Secretary of War Hegseth saying that from the moment they went down, our airmen went down, they were in constant communication with that airman. There were some reports circulating as well that it took a little while to actually contact with the emergency transponder or communication device that these airmen carry with them, especially that's activated after they eject. He went into more detail about what the first contact with that airman was like.
Transponder. His first message was simple and it was powerful. He sent a message, God is good. In that moment of isolation and danger, his faith and fighting spirit shone through. You see, shot down on a Friday, Good Friday, hidden in a cave, a crevice, all of Saturday, and rescued on Sunday. Flown out of Iran as the sun was rising on Easter Sunday.
Just incredible. I mean, you can't make that stuff up. We'll be watching that in a movie someday. Hopefully, someday. Speaking of Easter, the Easter Bunny was at the White House, standing alongside President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump atop the balcony on the South Lawn. It was a very surreal scene, seeing that big old Easter Bunny mascot standing right beside Trump as he talked about the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Normally, when you're in very hostile territory, and I don't think it gets much more hostile than Iran, they're capable fighters. They're very tough people. And there are others like that. You don't mind when the enemy is weak, but that enemy is strong.
The visual of the Easter Bunny standing right beside Trump as he's saying all this stuff is just, you can't beat it.
All, in my opinion, but we're soon going to find out, aren't we? But when a thing like that happens, where a pilot shot down, in most instances, you're really not able to go in, because you'll go in with 200 people and lots of jet fighters and helicopters, and you really don't have a chance.
Are we living in a simulation? I think maybe that is the case. Back to the Artemis II mission and NASA, where that crew aboard the Orion spacecraft set a record yesterday. Furthest distance from Earth that any human being, or in this case, 4 human beings, have ever been. We heard from Victor Glover, that astronaut, yesterday, talking about his perspective that were very special, that recognition, that conviction that came upon him as he was watching the Earth get smaller and smaller on his way to the moon. Well, right before the crew of the Orion spacecraft lost communication, the planned loss of communication with Houston, Victor Glover had this message.
To remind you of one of the most important mysteries there on earth, and that's love. Christ said in response to what was the greatest command, that it was to love God with all that you are. And he also, being a great teacher, said the second is equal to it, and that is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so, as we prepare to go out of radio communication, we're still to feel your love from Earth, and to all of you down there on Earth and around Earth, we love you from the moon.
So there is Victor Glover reminding, as they lost communication with their comrades here on planet Earth, reminding everyone within the distance of his voice. Christ said in response to what was the greatest commandment, That was to love your God with all that you are, Victor Glover says. And the second commandment is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's the message that astronaut Victor Glover wanted to share to the world as he lost communications, as this crew lost communications with Houston on their epic and historic journey around the moon. The Artemis II crew, riding their Orion capsule since launching from Florida last week, began their 6th day of space flight on Monday morning around 10:50 a.m. Eastern Time. They awoke to a pre-recorded message from the late NASA astronaut Jim Lovell, who flew aboard the Cold War-era Apollo 8 and Apollo 13 moon missions. Lovell, in the pre-recorded message, said, quote, "Welcome to my old neighborhood. It's a historic day, and I know how busy you'll be, but don't forget to enjoy the view. Good luck and Godspeed." The 4 Artemis astronauts set a new spaceflight record as they exceeded the maximum 248,000-mile distance from Earth and reached 1970 by Apollo 13 after nearly catastrophic spacecraft malfunction cut short that mission, forcing Lovell and the other astronauts, his 2 crewmates, to use the moon's gravity to help return them to Earth safely. Really historic stuff happening in outer space. Back here at home, the new Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, Markwayne Mullin, gave his first major interview to Fox News, of course, where he said he's facing a big decision soon. He says most of these sanctuary cities also play host to a number of major international airports, and he says it might be time to do away with customs for some of those airports.
To keep your state as safe as my state.
But Mr. Secretary, you know the issue here is that you have states and cities that are sanctuary states and cities. And that's part of the issue. It's part of the problem. We saw it in Minnesota. How do you get around that?
Well, I believe sanctuary cities is not lawful. I don't think they're able to do that. And so we're going to take a hard look at this. Just one area we may take a hard look at is some of these cities have international airports. If they're a sanctuary city, should they really be processing customs into their city? I mean, seriously, if they're a sanctuary city and they're receiving international flights, and we're asking them to partner with us at the airport, but once they walk out of the airport, they're not going to enforce immigration policy, maybe we need to have a really hard look at that, because we need to focus on cities that want to work with us.
So you're saying that big cities that are sanctuary cities that have a big airport, they might lose their customs?
Well, I'm saying we're going to have to start prioritizing things at some point. Right now, remember, the Democrats are wanting to defund Customs and Border Patrol. Well, who processes those individuals when they walk off the plane? So I'm going to have to be forced to make hard decisions. Who's willing to work with us and partner with us? Once again, I'm not going outside the policies that Congress passed for me, and we're not.
There's Markwayne Mullin, the new DHS secretary, threatening blue state major international airports losing access to customs and border protection if they don't agree to drop their sanctuary city statuses. I had not heard of this idea before. That's interesting. We'll see if Mr. Mullin follows through. Let's go to this now, and what is shaping up as more and more clips come out, perhaps a bit of a liability for one 2028 presidential hopeful. That would be Gavin Newsom's wife, Jill Newsom, who says she wants to make it illegal. She wants to make it illegal via force of the government for young men to become right-wing. Listen to this.
Boys, we all know, I think, are increasingly realizing that boys are moving away from sort of the more progressive. Boys that spend time online are moving a little bit, I'm trying not to be political here, but are moving to the right and being sort of influenced by the Andrew Tates and some of that sort of alt-right socialization online that we know is very, very dangerous. My husband and I were alarmed when our kids were watching sports online, and my son knew about Andrew Tate and thought he was pretty cool, and thought that his Republican grandfather, who's not a Trumper but a fiscal conservative, thought that my father would like Andrew Tate. So that's scary. We're like one of the most progressive households, and our son is confused and asking all these questions. We're working on legislation to hold tech companies accountable and help them be a force for good in our kids' and families' lives. To really provide all the best in class resources and support for youth so that they don't go down this rabbit hole of very, very dangerous and limiting narratives around ultimately what it means to be a girl and what it means to be a boy.
So there you have it. Jill Newsom, Gavin Newsom's wife, says they're working on legislation to make it illegal for young men to become more right-wing. Now, the devil is in the details here. If my son were a teenager and he came to me and he said, Dad, I think Andrew Tate's a pretty cool dude, I'd be pretty concerned as well, Joe, though not for the same reasons Jill Newsom is pointing out there. As you heard her say, basically in the same breath, you know what, we got to make sure that our kids aren't going down these rabbit holes of people telling them the truth about what's a boy and what's a girl. Also, if they become right-wing, we should make that illegal. Vastly different reasons for her saying she doesn't want her kids saying Andrew Tate is cool. Well, her version is, I would rather my son be trans than even consider that, there's anything out there, politically speaking, than left-wing tripe. I've seen more and more clips of her coming out. I'd never heard of her before, but it seems appropriate going from Jill Biden to Jill Newsom. We'll see. I'm not sure a straight white male can win a Democrat primary. I think he could win the presidency, but winning a Democrat primary is a far different story. When we come back, champions once again for the first time in 26 years. The Big Ten is on top of the college basketball world. Also, more laughs with the commander-in-chief and jumping the shark. It's coming up next. President Trump once again at the Easter egg roll at the White House, sitting around at a small table filled with small children.
I could sign autographs. Tonight you can sell it for $25,000.
President Trump, just a bizarre sight. As he's, the previous day dropping F-bombs, calling the Iranians crazy bastards. The next day, he's sitting at the kiddie table, surrounded by small children, promising them autographs and telling them they should sell them on eBay tonight and make $25,000. I mean, he's nothing if not, let's just say, flexible. One morning, sitting on the toilet, dropping F-bombs, threatening Iran. Next morning, sitting at a kiddie table, yucking it up with, 5-year-olds. He kind of spans the whole gambit there.
Length of the floor, layup doesn't go, ball knocked around, flung down the floor, Caravan trying to track it down, and he will. And it's over! Hail to the champions! Hail to Michigan! For the first time in 37 years, the Wolverines win the national title.
And it's the first time in 26 years the Big Ten is on top of the college basketball world. Michigan knocking off UConn last night in the NCAA Men's National Tournament Championship, 69-63. A closer game, especially towards the end, than many people anticipated. The Wolverines on top of the college basketball world, 69-63 over the UConn Huskies. And now here's this, jumping the shark. Tucker Carlson released his latest episode. Let's go to this clip where he gets really tough on President Trump, but not maybe for the reasons you might think. Listen to this.
Who do you think you are? You're tweeting out the F word on Easter morning? You'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. So obviously you're mocking the religion of Iran. Okay. If you seek a religious war, that's a good idea. But by the way, no decent person mocks other people's religions. You may have a problem with the theology. Presumably you do if it's not your religion, and you can explain what that is. But to mock other people's faith is to mock the idea of faith itself. And we should never mock that, because at its core is the acknowledgement that we are not in charge of the universe. We did not build it. We won't be here at the end of it. We can destroy life. We cannot create it because we are not God. The message of all faith at the biggest picture level is the message in our Bible, which is you are not God. And only if you think you are do you talk this way. But it's not just mockery of Islam. And no president should mock Islam. That's not your job. This is not a theocracy. We don't go to war with other theocracies to find out which theocracy is more effective. We are not a theocracy. And God willing, we never will be, because theocracies corrupt the religion. No, this is a mockery not just of Islam, it's a mockery of Christianity. To send out a tweet with the F word on Easter morning promising the murder of civilians and then saying praise be to Allah without explaining any of it, you are mocking me and every other Christian because we're Christians. We can't support that. That is evil. That is an intentional desecration of beauty and truth, which is the definition of evil.
Oh, where to begin with that? Finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. Tucker Carlson getting really hard on President Trump there. Skipping right past, he is a tool of Israel. Tail wagging the dog. Carlson went on to insinuate that President Trump might be indeed the Antichrist. Listen, that Sunday morning, Easter morning message, dropping an F-bomb, praise be to Allah, even though Tucker is right, he was mocking Iran, he was mocking Islam, especially doing it on Easter morning, that he was mocking Islam. It's not my cup of tea. That type of thing on an Easter morning, not my cup of tea. But clutching your ever-loving pearls over that is one thing. To then specifically hit President Trump for mocking Islam, taking great umbrage with mocking Islam, saying that no decent person mocks another person's faith. That is just jumping the shark, folks. And then invoking Christianity, saying that he's mocking Christianity while saying these things. And saying that holding up his Bible, you couldn't see it on the clip because you're listening. He held up his Bible and said, Trump is making a mockery of this book. Listen, there's a number of ways. Let's just start with the spiritual advisor, Paula White, more recently. Going back a decade ago, I was in the room when President Trump said in Ames, Iowa, yeah, I've never asked God for forgiveness. That's far more offensive to me than that tweet or Truth Social post on Sunday morning. There are times which Trump has made a mockery, at least appeared to score political points. You know what he's also made ovations over, and more recently? Mulling his future, his spiritual future, eternity. I don't think President Trump is a Christian. I just don't. I don't. But I think he's maybe more curious about it than, and genuinely so, than he's ever been. But let's go back to Carlson's comment about no decent person mocks another person's faith. No decent person mocks another person's faith. How would one know what decent is? How would one know the absolute definition of the word decent? The definition of the term decent person. How would one know that? I'm just asking questions. How would one deduce that? Secondly, would different worldviews or religious persuasions, would they maybe come to different definitions of what a decent person is? I happen to think yes. The history of our country, which Tucker Carlson says is not a theocracy, laying aside, of course, the fact that regardless of who the theo is, whether it's an uppercase T or a lowercase t, every government is a theocracy. Every government is, and always has been. Always has been a theocracy. Just depends on who the god of that theocracy is. But laying that aside, the very first war that we ever fought against the Barbary Coast pirates, we just talked about this. I just had this clip in the AM update from the late Christopher Hitchens. Jefferson, through intermediaries, asks, why are you attacking our vessels? We have no history with you. We have no aggression towards you. Why are you attacking us? And the Muslim leaders said, well, our religion says we can. You're infidels. We can do that. So I kind of think Islam might have a different definition of what a decent person is than, say, Buddhism, which might have a different definition than Hinduism, than Christianity. So how would we know what a decent person is? But laying all that aside, you're not an indecent person. You're not an indecent person for mocking another person's faith, especially if that faith is dumb. If somebody worships the flying spaghetti monster, like this, they conjure some sort of false god, and they say that this flying spaghetti monster gives them the ability to fly. And they really believe that. They have a lot of faith in the flying spaghetti monster, so they go up on top of the Empire State Building, attempting to jump off. And they do so, and they can't fly. And they reach terminal velocity, and they're scraping the person off of the pavement with a putty knife. Yeah, we mourn for that person, that poor deluded soul. But eventually, I think it's okay to mock that. I think it's okay to mock that. You know, the Bible mocks those in a certain way. The Bible mocks certain faith persuasions. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. That sounds like mockery to me. What about, Elijah the prophet? Where's your God? Is he taking a dump? How's that for some mockery? What is it with this guy? Goes all out to defend Islam. Cannot say a single syllable to encourage the passage of the Save America Act. He has surely jumped the shark. And he's not stopping. And I pray he doesn't take too many more deluded souls, deluded minds with him on his way down. This is just sad to watch. That's going to do it for Tuesday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.